The hook, the city never slept, but tonight it felt colder than usual. Rain fell in thin silver lines from the dark sky, hitting the stone streets and running into the gutters. Neon signs flickered above the narrow roads, their lights spilling over the wet pavement like oil on water. Shadows moved between market stalls that had long been closed, their owners gone, leaving behind only empty crates and the smell of damp metal. In one of those shadows, a figure crouched, low, hiding behind a pile of broken wooden boards. Her name was Lyra, and her breath came in small clouds of white in the freezing air. She was shaking, not just from the cold, but from fear. Her clothes were torn at the sleeves, the thin fabric clinging to her skin. The rain had soaked her hair, turning the strands into heavy ropes that stuck to her cheeks. She clutched something small in her hands, keeping it close to her chest. It was warm, almost alive, its glow faint, but steady. She kept her fingers wrapped tightly around it, hiding the light whenever it threatened to show through her palms. Whatever it was, she could not let anyone see it. Footsteps echoed down the alley, slow, deliberate. Lyra pressed herself back against the wall, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't dare look, but she knew someone was following her. It had been the same shadow since the marketplace, tall, broad, moving with the kind of patience that made her skin crawl. They were not in a hurry, and that made it worse. People passed by at the mouth of the alley, their faces hidden under hoods. None of them looked her way on this planet. Strangers didn't stop to help. If you were in trouble, you were on your own. She had learned that the hard way. The footsteps stopped. Lyra held her breath, her eyes fixed on the puddle near her feet. In its trembling reflection, she saw a shape moving closer, tall, human-shaped. She had heard about humans. Most aliens here feared them. They were said to be unpredictable, dangerous, even violent. She had never seen one this close before. The figure stepped into the alley. For a moment, the rain softened. The world seemed to narrow until there was only him, a man, his dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. His coat was thick, warm-looking, and he had a strange softness in his eyes. He looked at her, not with suspicion or hunger, but with concern. "You look like you need this," he said, his voice calm. He took off his jacket and held it out to her. Lyra froze, unsure. No one had ever offered her anything without wanting something in return, especially not a human. The sound of footsteps returned, closer this time. She glanced past him and saw the shadow, the one who had been following her, just turning into the alley. Her chest tightened. The human noticed the flicker of fear in her eyes and looked over his shoulder. His expression changed, sharp and alert. "Put it on," he said, a quiet command. She hesitated, then took the jacket with trembling hands. It was heavy, warm, smelling faintly of leather and something unfamiliar but comforting. The moment she slipped it on, heat spread through her shoulders, easing the ache in her muscles. But the danger had not gone away. The man stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the view from the alley's mouth. He didn't reach for a weapon, but there was a readiness in his stance. "Walk with me," he said, without looking at her. "Why?" She whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold. "Because if you stay here, you won't be alone for long," he replied. They began moving, slow and casual. The rain dripped from the edges of rooftops, splashing onto their heads. Lyra kept her eyes forward, but she could feel the shadow following. Every few seconds, she glanced down at her hands, making sure the thing she carried was still safe inside her pocket. The human's stride was steady, unhurried, but his eyes scanned every corner. When they turned into a busier street, the sound of chatter and the smell of fried food filled the air. They blended into the crowd. Lyra's heart began to slow, just a little, but then she caught sight of the shadow again, weaving through the people. Coming closer, she swallowed hard. "What do they want from you?" the man asked quietly. She shook her head. "You don't want to know." He didn't push, but his jaw tightened. The follower was closing the distance. The man's voice was low when he spoke again. "Trust me, or don't, but if you want to keep breathing, follow my lead." Before she could answer, He took her hand and guided her toward a side street. The crowd noise faded behind them, replaced by the drip of water and the hum of old neon lights. The follower did not stop. Lyra's grip on the object in her pocket tightened until her knuckles ached. She had no idea who this human was, but in this moment, between the freezing rain and the shadow behind them, he was the only person who had stopped, the only one who had offered her warmth, and she didn't know whether that made him her savior or the start of a new danger. The world. The side street was quieter. The market sounds were gone, replaced by the hum of old machines hidden behind walls. Pipes ran above their heads, dripping water in steady beats. The human Daniel kept walking without looking back, but his hand stayed close to her arm. It wasn't forceful, but it was enough to guide her. Lyra had never been this far into the lower sectors of the city. Up above, the towers were bright and polished, full of shops, air shuttles, and people with money. Down here, the walls were stained. The air smelled of rust, and the lights flickered like they were tired of working. It was the kind of place you only visited if you had no choice. Daniel finally stopped under a narrow awning, the rain running down in silver sheets beside them. "Safe here?" Lyra asked, glancing around. "For now," he said, scanning the street. He leaned against the wall, the jacket's empty sleeves hanging loose where she wore it. "You're far from home," he said, "and you're running from someone important." She didn't answer. She wasn't sure how much to tell him. She only knew this planet was dangerous for both of them. Humans were rare here. Most had left years ago when the Council passed the Foreign Species Control Act. It made humans outsiders, forbidden to work, to own property, even to walk freely in certain districts. The law said it was for security, but everyone knew it was because humans were different, too quick to fight, too loyal to their friends, too willing to break rules for the sake of one person. Lyra had heard whispers that humans were capable of strange things, bravery that didn't make sense, risks that no one else would take. But she had also heard darker stories. Humans who burned cities. Humans who fought wars for reasons no one could understand. She had never expected to meet one, especially here in the rain. Daniel pulled something from his pocket, a small round device, no bigger than his palm. It clicked softly, a faint green light blinking on its surface. "What is that?" Lyra asked. "Signal blocker," he replied. "Keeps your friends from tracking you." "They're not my friends," she said quickly. "Then we're even," he said, his voice dry. Somewhere in the distance, a low hum filled the air. Lyra stiffened. Government drones. She could recognize that sound anywhere. They were searching, their scanners sweeping the streets like invisible nets. Daniel looked at her, reading the fear in her eyes. "They want what you're carrying, don't they?" he asked. She kept her hand in her pocket, her fingers curling protectively around the small object. "I can't give it to them," she whispered. The drone hum grew louder for a moment, then faded as they passed overhead. Daniel waited until it was gone before speaking again. "You won't survive here alone," he said. "I was surviving before you found me," she replied. He gave her a small smile. "No, you were running." Lyra hated that he was right. She had been running for so long that her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. Still, she didn't know if she could trust him. Humans were dangerous, but so was the man following her. Between two dangers, which one was worse? Daniel glanced up the street, then back at her. "If you stay here, they'll find you," he said. "If you come with me, they'll still find you." She shot back. "Maybe," he said. "But with me, you might walk away from it." The Golfo via Wico. Way he said it made her uneasy, not because it was a threat, but because it sounded like a promise. In her world, promises were rarer than warmth. And right now, she was wearing his jacket, and it was still warm. The chase. Daniel didn't wait for her answer. He stepped out from under the awning, his stride calm but deliberate. "Stay close," he said without looking back. Lyra followed, her hand never leaving the small object in her pocket. The street ahead twisted between old brick walls and flickering neon signs. Crowds thinned here, leaving wide gaps where anyone could spot them. She felt the open space like a target on her back. A quick glance over her shoulder confirmed it. The follower was still there. Tall, moving with steady steps, never rushing, but never letting them slip away. Daniel's eyes kept moving, scanning doorways, side alleys, and rooftops. Lyra could tell he wasn't just watching for their pursuer. He was studying escape. "Roots. Walk normal," he murmured. "My normal is running," she replied under her breath. He gave a small, almost amused snort, but didn't answer. They passed a row of shuttered shops, the paint peeling from their signs. The air smelled faintly of ozone and fried oil. A small service drone zipped past overhead, its lights flickering. "Blue," Lyra ducked instinctively. "Don't," Daniel said quietly. "If you look scared, you'll draw attention." But attention was already coming. The hum of a scanner rolled down the street. Daniel pulled her into the shadow of a supply stall just as a patrol drone swept its beam across the road. They stood still, pressed against the wall, the light sliding past them like a searchlight on dark water. When it was gone, he moved again, quicker this time. The crowd returned as they reached the outer edge of a night market. Here the air was thick with smells, spices, grilled meat, hot sugar. Vendors called out in strange languages, their stalls piled with glowing fruit and strange, twitching seafood. Daniel guided her between the stalls, using the market noise to cover their steps. But Lyra's stomach twisted. The follower was in the market too. She saw his reflection in a polished steel counter, closer now. His eyes locked on them. Daniel didn't slow. He slipped through a narrow path between two food stands. The air so hot from the grills that Lyra's skin prickled. They emerged into a back lane crowded with crates. Daniel suddenly stopped, grabbed a tarp from one crate, and tossed it over a pile of boxes. "In," he whispered. Lyra stared at him. "Are you serious?" He didn't answer, just lifted the edge for her. She slid inside, crouching low. In the dark space, he dropped beside her, his hand resting on something hidden in his coat. The sound of boots approached. The follower stopped nearby, the shadow of his legs visible through the tarp. Lyra held her breath, her pulse so loud she was sure it would give them away. A moment passed, then the sound of boots moved on, slow but steady. Daniel waited another 30 seconds before lifting the tarp. "Move," he said. They slipped out the other side, into a narrow drainage tunnel that smelled of wet stone and rust. The sound of the market faded behind them, replaced by the drip of water echoing off the walls. Daniel's steps were quick but careful. Lyra followed, her boots splashing in shallow puddles. "You always run from people like that?" she asked quietly. "No," Daniel said. "Usually I make them run." She didn't know if he was joking, but there was something in his voice, calm, certain, that made her believe him. Up ahead, light spilled from a cracked doorway. Daniel slowed, listening. Then he turned to her, his eyes sharp. "They're not just chasing you," he said. "They're hunting whatever you're carrying." Lyra's grip tightened on the object in her pocket, and for the first time, she wondered if the human at her side had his own reason for keeping her alive. The reveal the drainage tunnel opened into an abandoned maintenance chamber. The walls were lined with rusted pipes, and a single flickering light hung from the ceiling. Water dripped steadily into a cracked basin in the corner. Daniel checked the doorway twice before shutting it behind them. The lock making a dull click, Lyra stayed near the far wall, her hand still buried in her pocket. "All right," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. "Time to tell me what's going on." "I told you," she said. "You don't want to know." "And I told you," he replied, "that if you want to walk out of here, I need to know." For a moment, the only sound was the drip of water. Then Lyra slowly pulled her hand from her pocket. Resting in her palm was a small crystal. No, bigger than a coin, but glowing softly from within. Its light wasn't steady. It pulsed like the slow beat of a heart. The glow painted her fingers in shifting colors. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "That's not a gem," he said. It's not from this planet, Lyra replied. Her voice was quiet, but every word felt heavy. This is a seed, Daniel tilted his head. Seed? It's not alive the way we are, she explained, but it can grow, change, and shape itself into whatever its host needs. Daniel stepped closer, his gaze fixed on it. Host? He asked. Lyra nodded. If you place it in the ground of a dying world, it will build the soil, purify the air, heal the waters, she said. But in the wrong hands, it can do the opposite. Strip a planet bare, feed on it until there's nothing left. Daniel let out a slow breath. Let me guess, he said. Your friends back there want the second option. Lyra didn't answer, but her silence was enough. She closed her fingers around the seed again, hiding the glow. I stole it from the council's research labs, she admitted. Daniel gave a low whistle. That explains why they're sending hunters after you, he said, and drones. And probably a whole squad by morning. Her voice shook slightly. I was going to take it off-world, to people who could protect it. Daniel leaned against a pipe, studying her. Do you even know how to use it? He asked. Her eyes met his. No, she said, and I don't think I'm supposed to. Daniel didn't move for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. When he finally spoke, it was quieter, almost to himself. I've seen one before. Lyra blinked. You've what? He looked at her sharply. Not here, not on this planet. Years ago, on a mining colony, he said. They buried it in the rock, thought it was some kind of natural crystal. Until the air changed, Lyra's pulse quickened. You know what it can do, she said. Daniel nodded slowly. I also know that once a seed chooses a carrier, it doesn't just grow for them. It grows with them. Lyra stared down at her hand, the glow leaking faintly between her fingers. She wasn't sure if the warmth she felt from it was real, or just her imagination. But if what Daniel said was true, she wasn't just carrying. It was carrying her too. The sound of distant boots echoed faintly through the tunnel. Daniel's head snapped toward the door. They found the trail, he said. He stepped toward her, his voice sharp. From this point, you do exactly what I say. Lyra's mind spun with questions about the seed, about Daniel, about why he knew so much. But there was no time to ask. The hunt was still on, and now, the thing in her pocket wasn't just dangerous to the world. It might already be connected to her in a way she couldn't undo. The threat, the sound of boots grew louder, echoing off the wet walls of the tunnel. Daniel moved to the far side of the chamber, his ear against the metal pipe, listening. They're coming in from two directions, he said. One from the market, one from the river exit. Lyra's chest tightened. They know where we are? Daniel nodded, his expression grim. They know exactly where you are. He motioned for her to follow, leading her through a narrow maintenance corridor. The walls were so close they brushed against her shoulders. Water dripped steadily onto her head from a crack in the ceiling. Every few steps, Daniel would pause, tilt his head, and listen. He was moving them like pieces on a board, avoiding lines they couldn't see. Then a new sound cut through the air, not just boots this time, but a voice. It echoed from somewhere ahead. Deep and steady, Lyra, the voice called. I'm not here to hurt you. Her breath caught. She knew that voice. Varric, she whispered. Daniel glanced at her sharply. You know him? Lyra's mouth felt dry. He was my guardian when I was younger, she said, before the council took me in. The voice came again, closer now. You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you, Varric said, his tone calm, almost kind. You can't protect it, Lyra. But I can. Daniel's expression darkened. Sounds like someone who wants you to believe he's still on your side. Lyra swallowed hard. He's not lying about protecting it, she said quietly, but his idea of protection means locking it away forever, or worse. They moved faster now, weaving through the old service tunnels. Every turn seemed to bring the sound of Varric's voice back to them. It wasn't shouted. It was too measured, too confident. He knew the tunnels as well as they did. Maybe better. Daniel stopped suddenly, crouching near a grate. Through it, Lyra could see the street above, slick with rain and lit by the pale glow of street lamps. A government drone hovered. There, its red eye scanning the ground, Daniel cursed under his breath. "They're forcing us toward him," he said, closing every other way out. Lyra's mind was spinning. Varric had once been the only person she trusted. A tall, steady figure who had taught her how to read, how to hide, how to survive. But the last time she saw him, his uniform bore the Council's crest, and his eyes had lost their warmth. Now he was hunting her like any other target, and worse, she knew he wouldn't stop. Varric never failed his missions. A faint metallic click came from somewhere behind them. Daniel stiffened instantly, pulling Lyra to the wall. An instant later, a thin, needle-like dart embedded itself in the tunnel wall where Lyra's head had been. She stared at it, the sharp tip glistening with something dark. "Tranquilizer," Daniel said flatly. "They want me alive," she murmured. Daniel gave her a hard look. "Trust me, that's not always a good thing." More footsteps closed in. Daniel scanned the tunnel ahead and spotted a narrow vent just above eye level. He ripped off the grate and shoved it into Lyra's hands. "Climb," he ordered. "What about you?" she asked. "I'll be right behind you," he said. "And if I'm not, keep running." She climbed into the vent, the metal cold against her palms. As she crawled forward, the sound of Varric's voice echoed one last time, closer than before. "You can't hide forever, Lyra," he said, calm and certain. "I found you once, I'll find you again." And for the first time since she started running, Lyra wasn't sure if she feared losing the seed, or feared facing the man who had once been family. The escape. The vent opened into a half-collapsed storage room high above the street. The walls were cracked, the floor tilted, and one whole corner had broken away, leaving nothing but open air and the dizzying drop below. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and metal. Daniel climbed out after her, his boots landing quietly on the uneven floor. "Stay low," he said, moving to the edge and looking down. Far below, Varric's team was spreading through the street, drones hovering between them, red scanning beams sweeping in slow arcs. "They're hurting us," Daniel muttered, "but they didn't expect us to go up." A metal ladder ran from the storage room up to the rooftop. Daniel gestured for her to climb. Lyra's hands were shaking, but she started up, the rungs slick from rain. The higher they went, the colder the air became when she pulled herself. Over the ledge, the city opened up around her. A maze of rooftops, chimneys, and glowing signs. Water pooled on the flat surfaces, reflecting the neon like shards of broken glass. Daniel joined her, scanning the skyline. "We move fast and—" "Stay low," he said. "Rooftops are open ground, but they're also faster than streets." They began running, jumping over narrow gaps between buildings, their footsteps splashing through shallow puddles. Below, the sound of shouts and drone hums followed them. Then the sky lit up, not with lightning, but with a wave of green light that rolled across the clouds. Lyra froze. "What is that?" she asked. Daniel's expression darkened. "Electronet," he said. "Council tech. Knocks out anything with a power source, including drone scanners. And sometimes people." The light rippled again, closer this time. Daniel grabbed her hand. "We don't want to be standing when that hits." They slid down a slanted roof, landing on a narrow catwalk that swayed under their weight. From there, Daniel spotted a bridge connecting two buildings, its middle section lit by the strange green glow of the Electronet's power lines. "Through there," he said. "That's right where they'll be watching," Lyra warned. "Exactly," he said with a grin that made no sense. "Because no one expects us to go straight through." As they crossed the bridge, the hum of the Electronet grew into a deep, bone-shaking vibration. Sparks danced along the cables above them. Halfway across, a drone rose up from below the bridge, its red eye locking on them. Daniel didn't slow. Instead, he pulled a small, round device from his belt and hurled it at the drone. It burst in a flash of white, the drone spinning out of control before crashing into the street below. They ran the rest of the way, bursting through a rooftop access door. Inside was a stairwell lit only by emergency strips. They descended fast, their footsteps echoing. The walls vibrated as the electronet wave rolled over the building, cutting power completely. For a moment, the stairwell was pitch black. Lyra's breath came fast in the darkness. "Daniel," she whispered. "Keep moving," he said, his voice steady. "They're blind too now. We have a window." They reached the ground floor, pushing through into an alley choked with steam from a broken pipe. The air was hot and damp, blinding them even further. But Daniel seemed to know exactly where to go, guiding her through the mist until they emerged into the cold rain again. Behind them, the electronet's glow faded, the city lights flickering back to life. Shouts erupted in the distance as Varric's team realized they'd slipped away. Daniel pulled her into a narrow drainage channel running beneath the street. "Where does this go?" she asked. "Somewhere they won't follow," he said. "Unless they're suicidal." The look in his eyes told her he wasn't exaggerating, and as they disappeared into the dark channel, Lyra realized that whatever was ahead might be worse than what was behind. The twist ending the drainage channel narrowed until they had to crouch. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint metallic taste. Somewhere ahead, a low rumble vibrated through the ground. Daniel stopped, placing a hand against the wall. "We're close," he said. Lyra followed him into a chamber where the water disappeared into a wide, glowing pit. The light was an eerie blue, swirling like liquid fire. "What is that?" she asked. "Geothermal vents," Daniel replied. "Hot enough to melt a drone in seconds, or us, if we're not careful." Before she could answer, a voice echoed from behind them. "I told you I'd find you." Varric stepped into the chamber, his figure framed by the tunnel's dim light. His weapon was lowered, but his stance was firm. "You don't understand what you're carrying, Lyra," he said. "Give it to me, and I'll make sure it's never used against anyone." Daniel moved between them. "And who decides what against means? You? The council?" Varric's eyes narrowed. "You think she can protect it?" "She's a child. She's alive," Daniel cut in. "And that's more than the council would allow if they had it." Lyra's voice shook. "Why, Varric? Why are you doing this?" Varric's jaw tightened. "Because I was there," he said quietly. "The last time a seed was used. It destroyed everything. Forests, oceans, cities, all gone in weeks. And I lost people I loved." His eyes softened just for a moment. "I won't let that happen again." Daniel's gaze stayed locked on him. "I was there too," he said. Varric's eyes snapped to him. "You're lying." "No," Daniel said, his voice low. "I saw a seed kill a world, but I also saw one save it. The difference was who held it." Lyra's fingers tightened around the seed in her pocket. It was warm again, almost pulsing with her heartbeat. In that moment, she realized something. It wasn't just reacting to her touch. It was listening. Maybe it had been listening since the moment she took it. Varric took a slow step forward. "Give it to me, Lyra," he said, his voice softer now. "You can walk away. No one will hurt you." Daniel didn't move. "Or," he said, "you can trust yourself and decide what this seed becomes." The chamber filled with the low roar of the vents. Lyra's mind spun. Varric's warnings. Daniel's trust. The seed's warmth. Slowly, she pulled it from her pocket. The glow spread across her palm, brighter than before. It wasn't the cold light of a weapon. It felt alive. For a moment, the three of them stood still, the glow reflecting in their eyes. Then Lyra closed her fingers around it. "I'm not giving it to either of you," she said, her voice steady. She stepped to the edge of the vent, the blue light swirling below. "If it's too dangerous to exist, I'll end it here. If it can save a world, I'll find that world myself." Varric's eyes widened. Daniel's mouth curved into the smallest of smiles. "That," he said quietly, "is the most human thing I've ever heard." In one motion, Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the vent. "Not today," he said. "You still have a lot to learn, and I think this thing has chosen you for a reason." Varric stood frozen for a moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Run," he said, his voice almost weary. "Because the next time I find you, I won't." Be alone, Daniel and Lyra slipped into the tunnels, the glow of the seed lighting their way. When they emerged hours later on the edge of the city, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Lyra looked at Daniel. "Why risk so much?" she asked. Daniel's eyes met hers, steady and certain. "Humans don't leave people out in the cold," he said. The seed pulsed once in her hand, as if it understood, and somewhere deep inside, Lyra felt that this was only the beginning.